What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, today I want to talk about a small island that has big geostrategic ramifications, especially in the world we are in today, and that is the island of Cyprus. So, looking at the world right now, especially with the war with America and Israel or the attacks that they're carrying on in Iran, and looking how Israel is strategically pivoting itself within this region to compensate for other security threats beyond Iran. One of the countries that has came into the focus that Israel is really banking on a strategic relationship with is Cyprus. So, for those that don't know, Cyprus is based in the Eastern Mediterranean and it has a great geostrategic location because it flanks the north of the Suez Canal, that vital trade gateway between Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. It also flanks west of the Levant and Syria, Lebanon, and a little bit northwest of Israel, and it flanks south of the Anatolian Peninsula or Turkey. So this country is very strategically located amongst a very important part of the world. So reason why this is so important is first, let's take a step back. Let's remember 1,000 years ago, there were no Turks in the Anatolian Peninsula. We must remember the Turkish people are an Eastern or a Central Asiatic people. These are people that come from the steppes of Central and Northern Asia, and they migrated west over centuries. And before they arrived in the Anatolian Peninsula, which was governed by the Greeks or the Byzantines, where the Greeks were culturally the cultural dominant as well as the elites of the peninsula, the Turks came and took over Anatolia in 1453. And this is the fall of Constantinople, the Greek version of Istanbul. And so since then, the Turks didn't stop when they hit Anatolia. They actually kept pushing west. And of course, a lot of this region was Hellenized or influenced by the Greeks. And one of those places was the Cyprus island. So, of course, there were Ottomans or Turks that settled in Cyprus. Now, this all changed when you get to a point that on the eve of World War One, Turkey was considered, or the Ottoman Empire was considered the weak man of Europe. What did I say? As Russia gets strong, the Turks get weak, and as the Turks got stronger, the Russians get weak. So what happened is this was the rise of Russia, as well as so many other powers. This is in 1878. The British were able to strike a deal with the Turks and the Ottomans, and they say, "Look, you guys are getting weak. How about we take care of this? We're just going to administer Cyprus, okay?" Because they needed a strategic base next to the Suez Canal, and it's a very critical part of the world. And they say, look, we're coming as friends. We're going to protect this place. We're going to administer it. You got enough problems on your plates, Ottoman Empire. We got you. And what happened? The British steals it. That's right. At the outbreak of World War One, the Ottomans side with the Germans, and the British annex Cyprus. So the British formally takes over the island. Now, this all comes to turn around the mid 20th century when Cyprus moves to become independent. And this involved four contributors to this agreement: the people of Cyprus, Turkey, Greece, and the United Kingdom. This island is primarily of Greek people. The Ottomans ruled it, but it's a contingent of Turkish people there. The British had governed it from its empire and had acquired or annexed it since World War One, and of course, it's the people of Cyprus itself. Now, the deal was okay. The party said, okay, we'll let Cyprus become independent, right? It is a strategic place, and nobody really wants it in the hands of their enemy anyway. So I said, let's just make it. It's no trouble by itself. So it'll be independent. It'll be a nation, but it has to be independent, right? It can't basically be annexed by another country. And of course, the Turks were primarily had the Greeks in mind. So lo and behold, what happened? There's an enosis movement within the country of Cyprus. And what this means is just Greek, it's union, the union. And it's this idea of nationalism where the Greek people of Cyprus wanted to be united with their Greek brothers. So there was a coup or revolution, so to speak, and the Turks didn't like this and immediately swarmed the northern parts of the islands and instituted governance because that was against their agreement. The Turks said, we're not going to let Cyprus join Greece, right? So what happened is just like the partition of of India and Pakistan, these population were intermingled and it became a mad dash. The Greeks in the north fled south and the Turks in the south fled north to the Turkish region, and an island became split between these two portions. Roughly around 30% of the population lives in the Turkish region, and the Turks hold roughly around 37% of the territory of Cyprus. It is heavily militarized, and it's about 40,000 troops there. That is absolutely massive. This displacement, when it crossed over, it was so widespread, it basically uh, took up about as much as a third of the population was impacted by this because of the Turks were so integrated amongst the country. So it permanently separated these two parts of the country. And of course, the Greeks ruled the Republic of Southern Cyprus, and then the Turks ruled an area called the TRNC, the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. So you have the Turks in the north now, and then you have the Greeks in the south. And it's kind of been like this since 1974. And what happened is the UN created a partition line or a green line separating these two areas. Now, later on that, the British component, right? The British has two military air bases there, Akrotiri and Dekalia. So these two airport or these two air bases is British, the remnants of the British Empire and their ability to project in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. So this is the current status of Cyprus. The Turks don't want unification with this island with Greece. They have a fraction of the land to the north, its neighboring side, which is highly militarized. Now that brings us to the modern day. We have this situation with Israel. Israel has been an alliance. Prime Minister Netanyahu just came out with a speech. And what was his speech? What was the cornerstone of his strategic ring? His cornerstone of his strategic ring was explicitly Greece, India, Cyprus. Now, there's some conjecture, and you can talk about possible expansions to places such as Ethiopia and Azerbaijan, which is very interesting because those are also two countries that are very much aligned or allied to Turkey as well. But primarily Greece, Cyprus, and India. And if you haven't noticed, there has been a strong investment component, settlement component, security component to Israel relationship to both Greece and Cyprus. Israelis have been moving over to Greece, and they have definitely been taking advantage of a relatively low cost golden visa opportunity on Cyprus. So the Israelis are pretty much entwining their security interests with their vitality. So when you have all these things put together, you have this new strategic ring that Israel has available to it. And the question is, how is Turkey and Israel going to coexist on this island? Or you can say the Turks going to coexist with the Israeli and Greek components on this island. So as Cyprus go, I think you're going to see it's going to be highly indicative of this relationship between Israel and Turkey and the danger it presents in the regions. We'd love to hear your comments. Comment below if you have any insight. Make sure you like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.